Hello there, lovely people. It's Alex from Nintendo Live here, and today we're reviewing for you Atelier Yumia, the Alchemist of Memories in the Envisioned Land, on the Nintendo Switch. This review was originally written by the lovely Mitch Vogel, and has been adapted for video by me. But anyway, that's more than enough waffling, let's dive right into things. Atelier has always been one of the more niche JRPG franchises out there, but it started to gain much more widespread appeal with the significant success of the Ryza trilogy over the past few years. Now that Gust has closed the book on Ryza's adventures, for now at least, it's come time to see if they can maintain that momentum and successfully pass the baton to a new leading lady as the face of the franchise. We'd say that it's been largely successful in that endeavor. Beyond the title, Atelier Yumia may not be immediately recognizable as an Atelier entry, but it's a really good JRPG that justifies the liberties it takes in playing with the series' conventions. Eschewing the low-stakes slice-of-life approach of previous releases, Atelier Yumia goes for a somewhat grittier and more grounded approach to its storytelling. In this world, alchemy is a forbidden and mostly forgotten art blamed for the catastrophic downfall of the Aladician Empire centuries before. Now, only the ruins of that once peaceful and advanced civilization remain, and the lone alchemist Yumia joins the Order of Ustella to assist the organization on a research expedition to uncover answers about the Empire's history and mysterious destruction. Though there are still plenty of cute and chipper interactions among cast members that fit in with the series' cheery identity, it's interesting how this game generally goes for a modestly but not insignificantly darker tone. This is evident in the thinly veiled skepticism most characters initially harbor towards Yumia and alchemy, and how much of her characterization is influenced by her mother's violent death in an accident 3 years prior. It's an interesting tale, one that keeps your interest by tantalizingly teasing the answers to bigger questions, and we're curious to see where Gust goes with this as it works on the inevitable sequels. Given the premise of Yumia being a key part of a research squad, a substantial amount of the gameplay loop is focused on exploration, to the extent that we were reminded of many recent open-world releases. Each region features an extensive fog-covered map rife with points of interest, whilst there are various ruins and quote-unquote Yubi towers that act as Zelda-like dungeons packed with puzzles and secrets. We appreciated the freeform approach, as you can't go far without finding something to collect or get caught up in. And though there's a main quest you can always follow and oodles of side quests to knock out, you're encouraged to set many of your own goals via the use of the pioneering effort. These are smaller regional objectives such as finding a specific number of shrines or bringing down a tough mini-boss enemy, all of which netting you points for special unlocks upon hitting various thresholds. Not only does this mean that exploration is constantly given a secondary extrinsic reward, but these goal lists are often constructed in such a way that they intentionally nudge you to step off the beaten path and get the most out of each region by ferreting out secrets. Naturally, the land is crawling with all sorts of foes, and combat follows an action approach that smartly mixes both turn-based and real-time elements. Though you can fight alongside party members, you can only control one character at a time, each of which has a small slate of available skills, and of course item uses that are governed by cooldowns. You can string blows into flashy combos, whilst enemies can interrupt at any time with a standard poke attack or a bigger MMO-style area of effect attack that gives you a few seconds to get out of the hot zone. You can also freely run in a circle around your foe, and there are 2 rings to jump between to dodge incoming strikes, or set yourself up for dropping attacks that hit an enemy's weakness. It's a bit like a livelier and more involved version of Final Fantasy's famous active time battle system. Even though there are combat elements where rapid timing and proper positioning are necessary to succeed, a lot of your wins come down to managing cooldowns and carefully planning out how to break your foe down. Some may be disappointed that Atelier is clearly leaving behind turn-based combat, but Yumia's system feels like a satisfying evolution of the work Gust did on the Ryza trilogy while still feeling unique. Naturally, it wouldn't be an Atelier game without a robust item synthesis system. The main idea here is that you have a central core of an item surrounded by a few nodes, a little bit like subatomic particles orbiting a nucleus, at least in the way that we were taught at school. tool. You place ingredients on each node, ideally in a way that allows their energy levels to overlap with other nodes and the core. Depending on the type, quality, and placement of the ingredients, the item itself will level up its various passive effects. It's a quality crafting system that goes way beyond the tired and minimal efforts of most games with obligatory crafting elements these days. Creativity, skill, and knowledge of the components is richly rewarded here. Naturally, this careful system would be laborious if you had to go through the entire process every single time you wanted to make something, so thankfully there's always an auto-build feature that you can activate and direct with goals like quality or bare minimum. It, of course, can never make things quite as nice as you could if you put the time in, but it's nice to have features like this when you're crafting things in bulk or things you just don't care about. As an extension of the synthesis system, there's now a base building system for those who like to give their surroundings a personal touch. Whether you're in the eponymous Atelier or out uncovering yet another campground as part of your ongoing survey, you can now craft all kinds of decorations and furniture to be arranged as you see fit in designated areas. Those who don't care for this sort of thing can pick from a growing list of pre-selected builds if you just want to drop a basic camp down and move on, but we appreciate the ability to customize these hangout spots. Visually, Atelier Yumia is, let's say middling. On one hand, we loved how streamlined and slick the UI looks, and the instant transitions in and out of combat right on the field are quite impressive. On the other hand, texture quality is poor, pop-in is frequent, and the relatively low resolution gives everything a rather fuzzy and messy appearance. The world and character design itself is beautiful, we were particularly fond of the inventiveness of the many ruins you encounter, but the issue is that the old Switch just isn't very up to the task on this one. And sure, the game does run on Switch, but only in the same way that I run in a marathon. Whether you're in docked or handheld mode, the frame rate typically hovers around 20 frames a second during the best of times, dipping even lower when there's a lot going on. You can recover a few frames if you go into the settings and enable the performance mode, which disables something, we're sure, but this then leaves you with an even poorer image quality, which admittedly doesn't feel like it performs that much better, if at all. Unfortunately, the Nintendo Switch is clearly not the ideal place to play Atelier Yumia unless portability is an absolute must. If you're a series fan and there's no other hardware available to you, this port is certainly passable, but we'd highly suggest you consider picking it up for another platform if you have that option to get the full intended experience of this release. Another point that bears discussion, neither positive nor negative, is that Atelier Yumia feels like a much more significant departure from the traditional format that the series has been slowly moving away from over the years. Gus producer Junzo Hosoi described this latest release as a completely new JRPG series that has Atelier features, and we couldn't agree more. Things like the diminished focus on a slice-of-life plot and a heavier focus on things like action, combat, and extensive exploration are certainly welcome, but leave us wondering if this means future entries will continue to distance themselves from the series' hallmarks that once gave it that kind of humble and cozy vibe. Suffice it to say, it's clear that the series has come a long way from the days of Atelier Marie or even Atelier Sophie, and there are increasingly more pronounced differences between modern and retro Atelier. In most respects, Atelier Yumia is an impressively ambitious and strong new entry for the long-running series, blazing a trail to parts unknown much like its titular protagonist. Things like the darker story, action-heavy combat, and increased focus on exploration gameplay all work well in its favor. The only major complaint here is that this was clearly designed with much stronger hardware than the Switch in mind, and while its performance here is just about acceptable, it's very far from ideal. At any rate, we give this one a recommendation not only to long-time Atelier veterans, but also to fans of other vast JRPG adventures such as the Xenoblade series. Atelier Yumia is a bold step forward for this franchise, and it stands as a strong indication that the Atelier series has a lot of life in it yet. Atelier Yumia, the alchemist of memories in the envisioned land, you're getting a 7 out of 10 from us. You've reached the end of the review. That means it's time for Alex's personal thoughts, and I've got to be honest, I don't think this game is my cup of tea. I went in with as open a mind as I could. I was, kind of excited to play a game that was outside my comfort zone, and whilst I absolutely didn't hate my time with the game or anything like that, I also just found myself a bit bored, to be honest. There were moments that I really enjoyed, but a lot of it just felt like the same thing time and time again, running around, collecting ingredients, fighting enemies that were... I don't know if it's just me, maybe I'm brilliant at the game, or maybe I should have put it on a higher difficulty other than normal, but they were really easy. Like, I don't think I had one combat encounter where I even came close to death. For me, it was kind of like being given a great big bowl of dessert, and there's this layer of opaque instant custard on top, and I'm thinking, oh, great, I like instant custard, and then you dig into it, and it turns out that it's all instant custard. You might find a sort of a chunk of treacle sponge now and again, but it's not worth going through all the custard in order to reach them. Now, in fairness, I haven't played the game nearly as much as Mitch, so do please take all that with a pinch of salt. There are a few things that I do think aren't down to just my personal preferences though, and they're mainly technical. Let's not beat around the bush. The game does not run well. I'm very sensitive to this sort of thing, and at the same time, I'm also able to look past it a lot of the time, but here, you know, I mean, you kind of get used to it, but it's not a good experience. It's very choppy, and even then, a lot of the time, the game's art style isn't enough to pull it out of its very muddy visuals. There are moments when it looks really genuinely very good, but sadly, they're few and far between. I also encountered a couple of glitches, one of which I had to shoot something through a gate in order to open said gate, in order to get into a room, in order to progress, and I couldn't see the switch at a distance, and I do think that the low resolution was a factor in that. But I didn't see this. I assumed I'd missed something and there was another way in, so I went all around the outside of the room, and then I just saw this thing saying interact. I interacted with it, and it warped me inside the room because it was on the other side of the wall, so I got in that way. There was also a quest where it was just like I just had to activate these two node things, these little statues, and for the life of me, I could activate one, no problem. There was a little mini game, did it, no worries. The other one, I just could not do anything. It's possible that I've missed something, or I need to unlock something later down the line, but I shot it, I attacked it, I obviously just tried to interact with it as normal. Nothing worked. So unless I'm not able to just yet, or there's something obvious that I've missed, this is just kind of like a broken, like, side quest that is going to be in my quest log forever. I think if you're a fan of games like this and you can look past all the performance stuff, then this could be a really good game for you. But if you're not into this kind of thing, I don't think this is the game to change your mind.